It's not the house that's haunted. It's your son.
What's your favorite scary movie?
What's the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, it was.
All right, listen. I know last week I said we would discuss Immaculate. We were going to rent it, but things happened. So here we are covering The Lost Boys. Completely different on the different spectrum, bro.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. But to be fair, we did mention it in one of the previous episodes that we'll be watching Lost Boys soon.
Yeah, I think we brought that up. We also talked about it off air a lot, that we would start covering some of the, I guess, vampire-esque films. We are aware that Lost Boys is not the first vampire film in Hollywood. There's plenty others dating all the way back to Stoker's Dracula. And is it Stokers or Strokers? If it's Strokers, that's kind of funny.
I don't know.
But I think it's Stoker. I think it's Bram Stoker's Dracula. But yeah, back in the day, black and white. So we can obviously review that in the future. But this is just us talking about The Lost Boys because we own the movie. It's easy for us to watch. And we went ahead and rewatched it. I've seen it plenty of times growing up as a kid. I think your first time watching it was in 2021 when I played it.
With you, yeah.
Yeah.
First time watching it was with you.
So the movie came out in 1987. It's labeled as a horror movie, but it's also labeled as a dark comedy as well. Starring Corey Haim, rest in peace, starring the well-known Kiefer Sutherland, Jason Patric, and also Corey Feldman. Corey Feldman was making a pretty big name of himself back in the 80s.
Yeah.
Also playing Tommy in Friday the 13th Part 4. He was also in The Goonies, I believe, as well. So he was very much making a name for himself.
Yeah, he was out there. If you looked for him, he was there.
Fun little trivia about this movie that I feel like was not known that much back in the day, but in the day and age of the internet and wiki, I'm sure plenty of people know it now. But if you don't, little trivia about The Lost Boys is that this was originally going to be a completely different film. Star was going to be a boy, and Star was going to be the best friend to Michael. The cast was going to be a lot younger too. This came out in 87, so I believe the writers were going to try and capitalize on the success of The Goonies, Little Monsters, very adventure-esque films that involved kids.
Yeah.
So this movie was going to be drastically different, but it's not. They slapped a rated R rating on it, made it a horror movie, and we got The Lost Boys.
I didn't know that, so that's actually a pretty cool factoid.
I told you one time.
Probably whenever we were first watching it.
Forgot though?
Yeah. I don't know. It's been a while. I mean, the other cool, I guess most people know this, but like fact is that the story continues in comics. So that's the one thing that I seem to have hyper focused on. But yeah, I also understand where the story was going, or at least the original script was going, as far as like making it more child-esque movie because of the big names they had for the younger kids in the film. Like a lot of the older ones, except for I forgot that
Kiefer Sutherland.
Yeah, except for him. I didn't really recognize, but everybody else, as far as like child actors go, I could name other movies that they were in.
Yeah, if they had wanted to make the movie about like 13, 14-year-olds, then like I feel like Sam, which was played by Corey Haim, and then the Frog Brothers played by Corey Feldman and then somebody else, I forget the name, that they would have had way bigger roles.
Yeah.
It would have been centered around them. Star would have been their age, and Michael would have been their age. Like it would have been a younger group of vampires, I assume. So I could probably even see that story maybe being that the vampires help the humans fight off the head vampire, like in a human-esque, like, let's go to the lair, let's travel together, we'll protect you type thing. Very Goonie-esque. So I can imagine that could have been the thing there. But you're not wrong. There is comic books, number of issues 6. I believe there's even a spin-off called Lost Boys, The Reign of Frogs, which tells the story of the Frog Brothers. And that's set between the straight-to-DVD non-canon sequels, I believe, of Lost Boys 2 and 3. So that is interesting. Some people I still do want to call them canon. Whenever you and I have a chance, we can check them out. But they're spin-off films, I believe.
Okay.
But what's interesting about this is the Lost Boys issue #1 talks about how after they defeated David and the head vampire, Michael and Sam now live with Star and them, and it seems that the brothers now must team up with the Militian vampires Edgar and Alan Frog when a new gang of ruthless, stunning, life-sucking nightcrawlers known as the Blood Bells emerge from the aftermath to collect Michael's love interest, their lost sister Star. So that's a pretty little neat storyline there to continue. So Star being the center focus of the comic book issue after this. That's pretty dope.
Yeah.
Blood Bells is kind of a badass name too. I ain't gonna hold you.
Yeah, I mean Southern Bells. There you go.
Oh yeah, that's right. But nonetheless, this movie is pretty much the epitome of the 80s. If we ever want to show this movie to anybody younger than us to describe what the 80s is like.
Fashion, the way that like people carried themselves, slang.
Music. This
kind of slogans and slang that they were throwing around left and right. So
what was your first impression of when I played this? You know, the overhead shot, the drone shot of the ocean, Santa Carla 1980s boardwalk carnival right by the beach. People in leather jackets, tattoos, spiky hair. What was your impression when I played this movie for you for the first time?
I'm pretty sure this is a very, very wrong description because I don't know when Grease was released, but I was thinking something along the lines of like a classic California film, and Grease had a child and all the cast are like spat out in that way, where you had like the greasers and the jocks, and then you also had girls who were greasers and girls who were jocks and girls who dressed right in between. But as far as like stepping away from, I guess, the way that people were dressed and how they were casted and things along those lines, I thought it was a very captivating movie. Definitely a movie ahead of its time, especially with the different shots that it had, like the drone shots. That's something that you didn't see all too often in the 80s or even early 90s. You and I were talking about this earlier whenever we were playing it, but the transition of Michael falling from the bridge into his bed, like that wasn't, I feel like it happened either during the beginning of when most movies were adopting that trend, or if anything, this movie kind of like set that trend, because I didn't expect a movie this early on in, I guess, the 1980s to have the kind of transition of somebody falling from a physical bridge. Yeah. And then the transition be into them falling into their bed. Yeah. I didn't see that quite often.
It's a common thing now. Like even most video editing programs have this simple like dissolve transition. So that you can just apply. So it's like, yeah, it's a very common thing now. But yeah, in the 70s and 80s, I don't know if I would have seen it that much. Maybe in the more I guess bigger mainstream movies. I mean, I know
that small.
I know like George Lucas, he did like the transition wipe. Yeah. You know, for his movies. So, and that was pretty unique for the time. Yeah. You know, so that was a pretty good catch there. I actually do want to talk about that scene as far as like a theory goes, but we'll get into that in a little bit. So the movie starts off carnival, like I said, set the tone, very 80s like. And man, the group, David's, I guess, tribe, if you will, total badasses, bro. Like they look like people you don't want to run into, but they also look like people you want to party with. Yeah. Like
they are dressed in the epitome of like the 80s. Like a lot of them have mullets, but they're very good looking mullets. They fit the guys' faces, the way that they carry themselves. Like everybody has long hair in one way or form. They all have piercings, leather tattoos, or leather jackets, tattoos, chains, right? Like, things that you would associate with like more edgy, alternative, like grungy looks, bleeding into, I guess, like semi-goth, if you will.
They look like an 80s hairband that would get all the girls wet, but also the toughest looking ones too. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Essentially, like not 80s goth either, like current, I guess, alt goth today. Yeah. Because like the kind of fashion that they're wearing, you see a lot of people wear today, which is pretty dope. Seeing it kind of carry on. Guys with eyeliner, like it was pretty cool.
Especially David's look. Like I think David's look is very much a modernized, like maybe the coat not so much, but I could still see people rocking it. I think in fact I have. Yeah, but like the black with the black pants, the black boots, like that's very much something that has stood the test of time.
Yeah.
That look,
Definitely. So. Everybody else, I'm not going to say like they seem like they're lost in the 80s, no, but they all very much fit the classic, I guess.
I feel like Marco's look, I could see like a K-pop star rocking that
now today.
Yeah, like
sure.
with the no shirt, but like maybe like a Gucci like coat, or like with this like cut out the top there with like this the pants. But yeah, either way, man, I guess our point here is that they looked the part, and you definitely were like interested in who these people were. You don't know, are they? Because back in the day when you're watching this, you don't have the wiki to go on and check it out.
No,
like,
not at all.
Like, are these the main characters? Are these the villains? Are these the heroes? Like, who are these guys?
They catch your attention like very much in the beginning, so you're just trying to figure out who they are and what role they play in the storyline, which very few movies I feel like capture my attention that quickly, even in today's day and age.
So they get into like this little scuff with this other group of guys, I guess like another gang, if you will. And then the security guard comes and breaks it up. Security guard then is leaving as his shift is over, and all of a sudden he starts running. You don't know why until he then starts screaming as something comes closer to him, and it's like a badass like shot of like just kind of zooming in, hovering over him. Very dope. He gets to his car,
like a hawk.
Yes, exactly. A vulture even, or something. Well, vultures come at you when you're already dead, but he gets to his car, and whatever it is so strong it pulls his car door off. Takes
along with him.
And that's kind of the trend for this movie. I'm sure you noticed a lot of the kills happen off screen, except for one big kill that we'll get into later. But a lot of it happens off screen, which I guess is what leads to the mystery of what's happening. Because I think I had lost this idea of what the film is that even though the movie sets the trend that Michael, and we'll get into him in a second, is transitioning into something, we actually really don't know what it is. You have the Frog Brothers telling you that there's vampires in the town,
but the way that they say it makes you think that as if they're very much into their comics and not speaking out on real terms. Kind of like how a couple of decades ago, if you went around and talked about UFOs or Martians, people would look at you and give you like a small smile and just walk away. Yeah,
whereas in this one, it's more with the vampire situation, and you really don't want to take the Edgar brothers seriously, anyways.
Yeah, never.
So, or the Frog, the Frog Brothers. Excuse me about that. Edgar's the name of the oldest one, but the Frog Brothers. You don't want to really take them seriously, but at the same time, though, like something's happening. Like, like Michael's clicking all the boxes of what a vampire is. They never really say exactly what he's turning into. Even Star really doesn't say what she did to him or what they did to him. And then finally, when you see the reveal of it, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And I had forgotten about that because I had watched this movie so young when I was a kid that like when I went back to watch it, that surprise was always gone. So like rewatching it with you in 2021, I was like, oh, okay, that it's supposed to be a big mystery, which is why they don't show you the kills. You know?
Because not many films had really capitalized and made it very open as to how vampires operate, if you will. They were always very like ambiguous and very mysterious. Like all forms of, I guess, movies or media up until that point would show the vampire actually biting into the victim's neck or turning into a bat or being actually physically able to fly. Like unless you were really into that kind of storytelling, you wouldn't be able to really piece together that, okay, Michael's turning into a vampire. It took me, I think my first watch through 30 minutes into the film to being like, this is leading towards more like Michael being a vampire and David being the ringleader. But then there's another plot twist in the movie and David's not really the ringleader. It's the elder vampire. The elder vampire is just giving orders to them, which in turn involved Michael. So it's like two plot twists in and of itself. But because of me being so into, excuse me, like supernatural entities and vampires all together, I could catch on to it really quickly.
Yeah. And that was definitely one of the big, I guess, plot points of that film.
Yeah.
And rewatching it with you made me like appreciate that a lot more about like why the kills are so much off screen. But you know, we're talking too much about that. At least I am. Let's go ahead and jump into where we do get introduced to our main characters. The Emerson brothers, played by Jason Patric as Michael, and the youngest one, Sam Emerson, as Corey Haim, the very popular Corey Haim, and also the mother, Diane West, who, Diane Weist, Wiest. Weist. We know her from Edward Scissorhands. Yeah, I love her older movies, man. But real good actress. Comes off very super charming, very nice. But nonetheless, we get introduced to them. Very fun family. They're getting used to the California lifestyle. I guess they moved here after she gets a divorce with her dad.
Yeah.
Or excuse me.
She gets a divorce with their dad.
Yeah. I forgot the there.
Yeah.
This ain't no incest stuff, bro.
Yeah. So her husband. So she's driving down to meet up with her father, who lives in California in Santa Clara.
Thank you for correcting me on that, because that would have been really bad.
Yeah. But jumping back, like the mom also integrates herself into the life there. Actually, on Fairgrounds, I think there's like a movie store, like a movie rental shop where locals can rent, but visitors can buy, and that's where Michael finds Star, and that interloops back into what we were talking about earlier with like the Lost Boys and Michael like slowly turning into them, and yeah.
So Michael goes after Star. I believe at this point, he's not able to catch up with her, so he kind of becomes infatuated with her. I think also Sam had already met the Frog Brothers, I believe.
Yeah.
At least for a split moment.
In the comic store.
Yeah, and I think they kind of scare him off with the whole vampire talk for the first round.
I thought he was more so amused that they actually thought it was real.
Or amused, yeah. And then I think also I can't remember if the mom meets Max on the first night that they're at the boardwalk, or if it's the second night.
I think it's the first night, but we're not supposed to know that Max is important. Max formally introduced himself on screen, I think the second or the third night.
So she goes there, presumably looking for a job, like Marva said. So it's the second night when they go back to the boardwalk. That's when Michael sees Star, or not sees Star. He's looking for a jacket to kind of, impress her, maybe even get his ears pierced.
Look more like the Lost Boys.
Yeah, she comes up from behind him. He tries to take her out to eat. That's when David and the whole group shows up. And then that's when they get into a race. And you don't really think it's a race at first, but they pretty much know what it is. Even I think Michael makes the line of like, I can't beat your bike. Like, why are we even doing this?
Yeah.
One little cool note that I picked up on was the first, or I guess most of the times I watched this, I never noticed this. But this time when I was rewatching it with you, it's almost as if like everyone's together.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, once they hit the fog, the rest of the group, the tribe, kind of goes behind David, Star, and Michael. And the more you look at it, it's that they kind of circled Michael.
Yeah.
As if he couldn't like get out of that position he was in.
He couldn't tell what was going on around him. Yeah. He had finally caught up with the boys. Like, he thought he made it, and then
it's a cliff, and which he, after they the whole, I guess, fake out happens, he goes and punches David. And that's interesting because, I mean, in most vampire movies that you and I have seen, one of the reasons why vampires are labeled apex predators is because of the fact that they just they're ready, bro. Like, their endorphins are off the chain. Like, they're always either ready to fuck, ready to eat, or ready to fight.
Yeah.
So when he punched David, I'm surprised the other guys didn't pounce on him. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, get that blood going, get that rush. So I'm surprised they didn't pounce on him. But he's very lucky that they didn't.
Considering that it was 5 against 1.
Yeah, and they're all vampires. So yeah. But I mean, yeah, even if they weren't vampires, that was still pretty. He's by himself on the edge of a cliff, and he wanted to challenge the leader of that little group. You know, like that's
all for a girl.
So it's got something for a girl he's barely met.
Yeah,
Michael's got some balls, bro.
Nah, he just has blue balls.
Not too smart though. As we get into the cave scene, where I guess this is their lair, right? They take them back to their lair. They're discussing what to do. They decide to get food, and I'll let you talk about this scene. So, up until this point in '87, had we seen vampires in movies showcase those type of abilities before, or was this new? Do you think? Because I can't think of anything off the top from like the early '80s or '70s that would have had vampires doing like mind shit.
So not so openly. I feel like be it in books or in movies,
maybe
vampires would, like, their saliva or their bite or whenever their blood would mix with the humans, like, would mix enough with them and cause enough chemical reactions in their brain to make everything feel euphoric and like as if they wanted it. or if it was against their will, they were too afraid to speak up, as far as like the mind manipulation goes.
Right.
But it wasn't like very supernatural-esque and very much out there, at least I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, until this movie where a vampire can actually project an image into your mind and you see it and it plays right in front of you. Like Michael's box of white rice suddenly turned into maggots in front of him when he looked into a box of like stir-fried noodles. He couldn't eat it because the first glance he had made the noodles look like worms. And come the scene where he's finally going to drink the quote-unquote wine, when in reality it's blood, because he's been tricked so many times and he thinks he's probably under the influence in one way or form, decides to take drinks off of said wine.
When in reality, we can presume is the blood of the head vampire.
Yeah, because it's in like this old-ass bottle with like gemstones all over it. And the more Michael keeps drinking it, the more he seems to be like reliving moments in his life. Because the first time I watched it, I thought it was almost like projections of what he wanted. Yeah. But watching it this time, I paid close attention and I noticed these scenes where they had already occurred. Like they were, when images of Star popped up, they were images of Star we had seen earlier on in the movie, or of his mom, or of his brother, or his grandfather. So it wasn't necessarily his desire. It was more so like glimpse of his life as he was transitioning, which was pretty cool.
No, yeah, really dope. Funny enough, they actually have that bottle, like replicas of it for sale. I was actually wanting to get one when I was living back with my parents, because I do like the movie a lot. So I mean, I bought it. Mm-hmm. So if I still find them for sale, I might cop one for the apartment. So
I am down.
Yeah, it's a pretty dope looking bottle.
Yeah.
Imagine like with the RGB, the red shining off of it.
Don't worry, with how the lights all turn red at the same time. I think that was the universe saying, "Yeah, do it."
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But
sorry, we have RGB lights all over our room by a very good brand.
Govee, sponsor us.
Yes, please.
I want all your lights.
Literally, our entire living room is lit up by our products.
I want to buy more because they actually do help us save on electricity.
Yes, and they're very trendy looking. They're very cute. We have them in our bedroom. We have them in the living room. We almost wanted to put them in our kitchen too.
I should reach out to them.
Yeah, because they're really nice. Like before, they were like the more affordable version of like the Philips light. Now they seem to have like made a name of their own. They're still more affordable than Philips lights. Don't get me wrong, but they're definitely more expensive than what they used to be. Yeah. I'm very partial to Govee, so I feel like Philips is just.
I remember when you first bought your first pair, they were like what, $11, $10?
Yeah. They were the regular raw LED strips.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And now, I mean, they cost up to like anywhere between 80 to like 150, depending on what you want. So.
Yeah, I mean, mind you, they still have the cheaper pieces, but if you want some of the more like cleaner looking ones, then they range from I think $15 to $20 all the way up to $190, depending on the pack, the set, the length, and so on and so forth.
Especially the lamps. The lamps are the most expensive ones, but they're the dopest too.
Definitely. So. I think they even ranged off into like doing air filters, heaters, coolers, like home appliances even, where you can all control from an app, which is nice. You can create your own themes.
They have an RGB fan that just came out, and if I had known that was going to drop, I would have saved on getting the Dreo, to be honest. But sorry, this is not sponsored. We just like them a lot. Sorry about that.
But Govee should definitely sponsor us because we just gave you free advertisement right there.
Yeah. But anyways, the movie kind of segues into this. Well, first, before we get into the comical stuff with the Frog Brothers and all that, let's actually get into the bridge scene. So after the wine and the ecstasy-like moment, you have Michael and them walking across like this bridge. It's for a train, and then they all kind of like start dipping. Michael's getting scared, doesn't know what's happening. Then he looks down; they're all hanging. He decides to drop down too because hey, why not? Again, not that smart, this dude. No, but he decides to hang down with them, and everyone starts dropping off. He's getting even more scared. Yeah. The train's coming. The bars or the rails are rattling. Like this dude's losing his mind. The train passes.
He can barely hold on because the entire bridge is shaking.
Then he falls. Now, I want to pose this question to you guys who have seen this movie. So, when Michael's falling, do you guys think that he ultimately gets, like, caught by David and them, and then they just drop him off back at his house? Or do you feel like he just hits the ground, but because he's a vampire, he's able to recover from it? If you pay attention to the next scene in his bed, he's actually covered all over in dirt.
This is the transition that I brought up earlier, where he's falling from the bridge and he's falling into a pool of fog, but as he's falling and the further he seems to fall, he suddenly like transitions into his bed and he's thrown into his bed.
Or do you guys think he actually flew instinctually because of being a vampire?
Having vampire blood in him, like that it quickly kicked in.
What do you think? Because at one point he had to have been on the ground because of how much dirt he had on him. But what do you think?
I feel like his abilities probably kicked in halfway. And the reason why I say that,
I think I know where you're going with this,
is because David keeps telling him right before he lets go, "You're one of us now. Don't worry, you're one of us."
Yeah.
Doesn't say what, but keeps saying you're one of us. And I feel like vampires, and them obviously being vampires, I feel like at this point in time, having such a keen sense of smell, they could probably tell that his blood was changing. So they weren't thirsting for him as much anymore and not necessarily fucking around with him as much anymore. Hey, I don't know if you noticed, but they weren't playing cat and mouse as much with Michael anymore either. Because I felt like the game with the scene on him in the motorcycle was very much cat and mouse like. David saying, "You don't need to keep up. You just need to, you don't need to beat me. You just need to make sure you keep up." And then all of a sudden, all of them flanking him and surrounding him. Because I thought about it, and I was about to pose this question to you whenever we were watching it earlier. Why is it that these guys are so complacent and so compliant with David whenever Michael is right there? There's two different outcomes that could come from Michael trying to chase them on the bike. He either, trips out and hurts himself, or he ends up going off the cliff. Either way, they get a meal out of it, right? But if he survives, then he passed the test, whatever the test may be. Test being that whether or not he's worthy of being turned into a vampire. So flash forward back to the bridge scene. David keeps telling him, "You're one of us." Michael lets go, and he's depicted as falling. And at some point, whenever he's falling, it seems like as if he's hovering for a moment. His hair is not moving. The fog isn't moving behind him. He's just there for a split second. And he even stops screaming for a second, looks, and then starts screaming again.
That's what I thought you were going to bring up, yeah.
So more likely than not, that's whenever his flying abilities kicked in. But because they kicked in so quickly and he wasn't aware of it, and he probably became so overwhelmed, he passed out, which led to him falling enough distance to where he didn't hurt himself. Because we saw dirt, but for how long was he hovering, or for how long was he falling very slowly? And then he fell enough to where he got dirt on him, but not to tear up his clothes or to put any scratches on him.
I did just remember it probably was David and them dropping him off, because if I'm not mistaken, don't they show up later on their bikes, just kind of get him to come out when he's with Sam, right? The house starts shaking and they're like, so they probably did drop him off then. So
they're probably either making sure that he's still there or trying to see whether or not he's already taken his first drink.
Right, yeah. I get you. That makes sense. So that scene happens. Really cool, dope scene. That's probably one of the best shots in the movie. Yeah. And they hyper focus on it, so they know what they're doing with that shot.
Definitely.
But we then kind of run into this back and forth where we see just different things happen, showcasing how Michael is changing. And then we also see antics with Sam and the Frog Brothers. At this point, I believe their mom really starts to get into it with Max going on multiple dates with him. Yeah. All of them failing.
In one way or form.
But he's very persistent. He wants to keep going out with her. He wants to make it work.
He's trying to make it work with the kids too, which is very surprising. Because usually, dinner scene, again, we're talking about 80s type films because now it's very much worn out. But back then, usually when there's a stepmother or a stepfather coming into the mix, they don't get along with the kids at all. They put one face in front of the person that they're trying to date and then another face in front of the kids. It's very much in the later years of Hollywood where the person being introduced to the family is trying to win the side of the children along with their future partner or would-be partner or whatever the case may be.
We actually get this interesting scene at dinner where Max is coming over. It's, I guess, it's the mother's turn to cook and have the dinner place for them. And when he gets to the door, Michael wants to leave. I guess Michael's gonna go hang out with Star, or I think at this point he actually goes and meets with David. Yeah. But he answers the door, and Max says, "I'm not coming in until the man of the house lets me in." Michael says,
"Come in.
You're invited."
Yeah.
So he comes in. Very old school. I feel like most people would have known at that point.
Yeah, and I also think it also points to the reason as to why David and the rest of the boys didn't come into the house. They were just only circling it with the motorcycles. Like, yeah, sure, it was an intimidation factor, but at the same time, they probably couldn't come in either because they were never invited.
Yeah, so
they were just there hollering out at him or just trying to check up on him without having to ask for permission to come in.
Yeah.
Because knowing David and the rest of them, they're not going to ask. They didn't ask whenever they came in later on in the movie. They figured out a way to scare it out of the younger brother, I think, right?
I think so. I actually forget how they come in, but I do know they pretty much invade them later on.
Yeah. So they figure out a way, but an invitation is thrown in there in the mix.
Yeah. But either way, we get that scene that plays out. We get some more comedic stuff with the Frog Brothers and Sam. And I don't want to, like, just skim through what they do because they really do work well together. There's a reason why Corey Haim and Corey Feldman were known as like this little duo in Hollywood. Their chemistry is really good. Mm-hmm. So seeing them work together and all this stuff, really cool stuff. See them progress as like how he thought they were these weirdo kids of the comic book store appearance, but yet they kind of come together as friends. Once we kind of get a little bit more of the confirmation of what Michael may be turning into, that's where they decide to go ahead and go to... Oh, actually, I'm actually skipping a scene. The confirmation is what happens at the bonfire. Michael meets up with David and the guys. They take him out to show him exactly what being one of us means. And they ransack an entire group of guys. Yeah. Not women, just guys. And you're seeing them get torn up, thrown around. It's insane. Again, you really don't know what's happening. And then out of the shadows, you see David and them come up. And of course, you see their faces. And they are for sure vampires. And I think that's where he drops that bar where he's just like, you live forever. Right? You don't get old. You live forever. But you got to do one thing. You must feed. Yeah. So now Michael knows exactly what he's going to become, what he is becoming, I guess you should say.
Yeah, because mind you, throughout the film, he shows different signs. He's very sensitive to the sun. He starts becoming very, like, crabby and just, like, almost bitchy towards his entire family. He's hungry all the time. He's depicted eating or, like, drinking milk, which was considered almost like a holdover meal back then. So
I think that was also supposed to be part of the twist too, right? It's like the little things that he's doing. Because I feel like maybe it was mentioned in books. Yeah. But casual audiences going to the theaters back in 87 probably wouldn't have known that, well, if you're only half a vampire, then the sun doesn't hurt you. Because even though Michael was showing signs of like the sun bothering him, he didn't like burn when the sun hit him. So
he didn't blister, he didn't scorch.
It adds more to the mystery of like what David and them are, and that's what you're supposed to see in that scene. You know? So
I mean, you see Michael almost like with wig out and want to cave in and bite in, and like almost like the overwhelming feeling of needing to feed came through, and you could see it on his face, but he figures out a way to break away.
Yeah. So once you get done with that scene, that's when I was actually going to skip to this part, but that's when the Frog Brothers and Sam and Michael go and want to rescue Star. They go into the cave, the lair. Michael takes them there. And this is where we get an interesting scene. So they're able to save Star, and I believe the little boy's name is Nicky. I could be wrong though. But they save Star and the little boy. And the Frog Brothers have the interesting idea to stay around, go lurk around some more. They eventually find an area that stinks really bad, so of course it has to be a vampire place. They realize that they're not just wandering in a hole, they're wandering in what is a big-ass coffin for all of them. And they decide to kill one, and they go after the smallest one, which was Marco, who I think is actually probably the closest one to David, because I don't know if you noticed, but when David speaks out, it's usually to Marco to grab things or to go get things. So I think Marco was either just happened to be maybe he was turned by David himself. I don't know. So maybe that's why he had like a little connection with him. Or maybe they were friends prior to being vampires. Yeah. But they kill Marco. And so I mentioned earlier, a lot of the kills are off scene, not too bloody. But in this scene, there's goo, slime, blood everywhere. Yeah. It's probably... I don't get grossed out by movies unless like it has to do with maybe like vomiting. But
yakking, yeah.
When it comes to this is probably one of the scenes where I probably wouldn't be eating something while watching it, because it was just everywhere, and David gets pissed. He chases the Frog Brothers out. They, of course, escape, and that's what leads us into the final scene. I'll let you take over, but the funny part is when they're preparing for the final scene, I like how they go interrupt the baptism to steal holy water and everything. But
insane work. Going back to, I guess, the storyline, whenever it cuts to the final scene, it's where the Frog Brothers and the younger brother have finally made it back to I guess Michael's place, or Michael's family's place. And all the grown-ups are gone. You have Grandpa off seeing Widow Johnson. You have the mom on a date out with Max. So
again.
And this time the date seems to be going more successfully. Mind you, the relationship between the mother and the kids is a little bit more strained because she feels like all these interruptions were on purpose by her kids. When at one point the younger brother, I always forget his name, I'm sorry. Sam, Sam seems to be on this bend where he's trying to convince his mom that Max, or at least there are vampires in this town. He seems to be hyper-focused on Max being a vampire. I don't really remember the reasons why, but
I forgot, he goes to the video store too and makes a scene about that,
and the mom is very much not appreciative of it. She thinks it's retaliation, or almost like a form of trying to ruin her chances with a man. So she's very much adamant on being with Max. So Sam is very aware of Michael being a vampire, very aware of other vampires being there. The Frog Brothers not really being as wacky and things along those lines. So that's where it leads up to the team up and so on and so forth. So I guess going back to the scene, you have Sam and the two Frog Brothers coming in. Michael's also there. You have Star and Nikki there. And then that's when David is invading the house along with the rest of the Lost Boys. Before the Lost Boys get there, you have the Frog Brothers, Michael and Sam, making all these different little booby traps. They have a bathtub full of garlic, I think. They have guns filled with holy water.
Water guns.
Water guns, excuse me. Just like how Apple turned the gun emoji into a water gun emoji.
Yeah.
I'm going to turn my gun into a water gun. That probably made no sense. I'm sorry. So they're laying all these little traps. They have, I think, aerosol guns and matches are laying around too, just in case they need to use fire.
They all kinds of shit.
They use firewood and turn it into different stakes and spears. I think Michael is also trying to figure out how he's gonna pin up some of the other Lost Boys, and one by one they all get taken out, and David seems to be getting more and more upset. We finally get to the showdown between David and Michael, where they're jumping around through the house, going from room to room, tearing at each other. You see Michael turn for the first time. His features becoming more and more vampire-like, but he still hasn't fed quite just yet, which is pretty interesting. But the more he seems to turn into a vampire, the more he loses himself. So Sam's there trying to pull him back, and once he does, Michael is then able to overcome David, kill him, but he's not turning back. Star's not turning back either, and neither is the little boy. I think Nikki, you said?
And that's when they realized that David was not the...
Yeah.
So...
That he's not the head vampire. Mind you, they're not running from room to room, by the way. All the characters are flying, and it also points to the fact of these vampires don't have the bee-bats to fly. They can fly as humans, which I guess kind of points to the bridge scene that you and I were talking about earlier, where Michael could have been hovering for a split moment and then started falling again. But
I think there's even a scene where Star jumps up right through the window or something, but the way they edited it didn't look like she flew. It's just she's from there, and then she's there, and then Sam's
so she figures out a way, and Sam being very much hyper focused on the fact that vampires are real and being afraid
just freaked him the fuck out. So I remember he runs under the covers and puts himself
it's pretty cute. Sam tries to come off like this tough dude when in reality he's still very much a little kid, and it's adorable.
Remember she goes, "I told you it was blood." He's like, "You drank somebody's blood? Are you nuts?"
And Michael B, I thought it was wine. But I guess going to the final showdown, you have
The mom comes
and
home.
Mom come back home. They see the house being torn up. They see all the bodies everywhere. And then that's whenever Max seems to like flip. And you come to find out that him being this very patient guy and being so understanding, there was an ulterior motive behind it. He wanted to create a family for himself, have a mother figure for his boys and girl.
The blood-sucking Brady Bunch, according to Edgar Frog.
And it was pretty funny. So now Michael being exhausted and the rest of the Frog Brothers and Sam being tired out because they just fought off like 5 different vampires need to fight off the Big Daddy.
And they get incapacitated quickly, bro. Like, yeah, like Michael's not even a fight. Like, It's just, so there's that. I think at this point, the mom is left alone, right? Because I think he even knocked Star out too. So then the mom, no, he has Sam in a headlock. He's about to bite Sam. The mom says, "No, I'll go ahead and let you take me." So she goes over there, and then that's when, right as he's about to bite into her neck, the grandpa comes, honking that horn of his, and drives a huge, I guess, like log, but it was sharpened into a stake.
Yeah.
Right into Max, sends him right into the fire pit. Huge explosion. I think it even shows like a wide shot of the house. You just see a huge dust of air and fire. Max is gone. Michael and Star have now gone back to human, as well as the little boy. The movie has a funny ending where the grandpa looks like he's been through some shit.
Yep.
So he walks over to the fridge and he opens it up, grabs a root beer, and he says, "The one thing I can never get over about living here is the goddamn vampires." And then lights shut off in the house when he closes the fridge. End scene. Very dope movie. Mm-hmm. For some of you guys who don't know, I believe in either issue 1 or 4 of the Reign of Frogs, there's a flashback scene to this very moment where they actually confront the grandpa about this, and it's revealed that the reason, babe, why there's so many animal heads and things in the house is because he feeds on animals. He's a half vampire. They wonder how come he didn't turn into human again when they killed Max, and it's because Max wasn't the one who turned him. It was the Widow Johnson. So
yeah, which makes sense as to why he was visiting her so often. So.
And why I guess he looked so fucked up when he came back, because he had probably just got done. Well, actually, he probably didn't kill her because he would have turned back by then, unless he did. But either way, the flashback scene does explain, I guess, why the grandpa didn't want anyone touching his stuff in the fridge and why he had a whole room full of dead animals and dead everything. So that explains all that. So cool little, I guess, side mention there. But nonetheless, that was The Lost Boys.
Yeah.
What you think?
I really like the movie. I think you and I made the observation The Lost Boys seem to have gained a lot of popularity within the last couple of years. I think you and I kind of pointed out the fact that Killer Clown, like around the time that Killer Clowns became really big again, the year after Lost Boys seemed to be like the new old movie that was back in. Yeah. Because all of a sudden we saw an influx of merch, and mind you,
Hot Topic, box
never see merch for Lost Boys ever.
There's even like I think stickers at Terror Market when we went that one year. Yeah, it was
like a lot of different vendors were doing it.
The Lost Boys cake, remember that?
Yeah. So it was pretty nice to see it come up, but at the same time, seeing it happen out of nowhere was a little bit jarring. So I think the movie after that was Friday the 13th again, because I saw a lot of like Jason shit, and then. I think Hellraiser has been the most recent one that I've been seeing a whole lot more, funny enough.
This year?
Yeah. So far, anyway.
Because I was going to say, we haven't been to too many vendor spots or even, we didn't go to Terror Market.
Not this year.
Not this year. We'll go later this year, but not earlier this year. So we kind of missed out on like what's popping right now. We haven't even really been to Hot Topic or like...
No, not as of late.
So we'll probably like...
I know Five Nights at Freddy was big, but that was also because the movie had come out.
Yeah. We'll probably go check some spots out. We'll make like a dedicated day where we do like some horror vibes and go drive around, and we'll see like what's new or like what's popping right now.
Yeah. But going back to the whole point, the fact that Lost Boys really made a comeback, and it was for one solid year, and I feel like it just continued for a little bit longer too. Not to say that it fell off again, because I do hear more references of Lost Boys and people talking about it more now, but it seemed to like come back onto the map out of nowhere.
Rotten Tomatoes has it at 77% critic score and 85% audience. What do you think about that?
I think it's pretty solid. I would side more with the audience than the critics.
It's like an 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to be generous, maybe 8.5. But I feel like overall, yeah, I would probably say a solid 8 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
I think like the music's good, the acting is good, the scares are pretty decent, and yeah, I think that's the out of 10 is fine. Yeah. But let us know what you think about The Lost Boys. If you haven't seen it in a recently, then make sure to go check it out. We highly recommend it. But thank you for tuning in to Slashers in Sync. Next week we'll be back with hopefully Immaculate, but we'll see.
We'll see, because anytime we seem to promise something comes up, but a lot of the times we seem to still follow through. So I guess it's just kind of a roll of the dice. If you
expect Immaculate this season.
Definitely.
For sure.
Yeah. So. At some point in time, very soon.
But thank you for tuning in as always, and we'll talk to you guys next time.